Well, Victorian Liberal MP and former state leader John Pesutto has avoided bankruptcy after the Victorian Liberal Party announced that they would loan him $1.5 million. That, of course, follows his defamation case loss to Liberal Upper House MP Maura Deeming. That, of course, over comments he made following the 2023 Let Women Speak rally in Melbourne. Now, if he was found bankrupt, Pesutto would have had to resign from Parliament because in the Victorian Parliament, if you are bankrupt, you can't hold that seat. Now, a lot of people don't know that because it's a very old law, as are most of our laws. No better man to go through it with, though, than Six News Law and Government editor and the host of Between Parks Place and Capitol Hill, Stuart Jeffrey. So, Stuart, starting off in Victoria, what exactly is the disqualification that would have applied for John Pesutto here and then trigger that by-election in his seat and my seat of Hawthorn?
Yes, theoretically, if that did happen, he'd be disqualified under Section 44, subsection 2 of the Victorian Constitution Act of 1975. It's actually listed alongside being a part of either federal house or being a judge as being one of the three big reasons, and we'll get into that shortly. But it is one of the three big ones. Of course, you also have criminal convictions, which exist in all states and territories and federally. It's either 1 year or 5 year. But all of them agree that bankruptcy, if you're declared bankrupt, well, it's called undischarged bankrupt, where you still have debts that you haven't been discharged by the courts, then you would be disqualified. So that would disqualify him under Section 44. That stopped him from running in the future. So even if he cleared the bankruptcy now, he couldn't run in the next Victorian election, but he would be disqualified in Section 46 as a sitting MP who therefore becomes retroactively unqualified.
What other precedent do we have for this? I know that, and we'll get into historical examples in the past, but this kind of disqualification isn't unique to the Victorian state level.
No, certainly. It's a lot less regular these days, certainly. But you do go back to colonial times where you have examples of of bankruptcy. In fact, it comes from the idea of Parliament being, it comes from the House of Commons as being the body in charge of spending money. And the reason being that if you are bankrupt, you can't manage your own finances. Therefore, you shouldn't be in charge of how the state spends its money. Of course, it's a lot less common these days. It's to the point where it doesn't actually exist in Victoria. There is the automatic disqualification for being bankrupt because it's no longer seen as being that important. But certainly, it definitely wasn't an irregular event, especially when back in the early 1800s, early colonial era, you had most MPs had to have a requirement of having, X amount of income per year, X amount of land. So in those contexts where you had a mostly upper class uh, voting pool and also an upper class upper house and an upper class lower house, really confusing. You would have a lot of people being bankrupt. You wouldn't have that as much nowadays, certainly.
No, and that reflects kind of the curiosity around this not happening Hawthorn by-election. There's just a reason for it. You've just said there, so I want to expand on it, that this has happened before. Look, it happened in colonial parliaments, happened in kind of early state parliaments, when, of course, you had MPs who had many problems that would not be applying in 2025.
Exactly. Previous, yeah, you go back to early colonial times where they had to pay MPs because MPs had to come in by horse and cart. So definitely, it's definitely something that's, seen as not really relevant anymore these days.
Just
Mostly
quickly,
speaking, of course, but pseudo proving that it can be relevant. It's one of these laws that everyone ignores until it suddenly happens. Like we've only ever had, I think, two recent challenges in Victoria, and that was against the election in Bulleen, I believe it was, against Matthew Guy, where you had a challenge against that, and that was dismissed by another candidate. And I think there was a UAP one in there as well. And those both got dismissed pretty quickly, although those weren't bankruptcy, but they were Section 44 regardless.
we hear sometimes about should we dump Section 44 if we're talking at a federal level, because it's outdated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But given the kind of obscurity of this law, I don't think, and I'm wondering if you've seen anything different, but I haven't really seen anything advocating for change for this. It's just one of those old laws that if you somehow fall afoul of this disqualification at this point, like it's on you.
Yeah, well, certainly, at least at a state level or territory level, It does. I want to say it makes a little bit more sense getting rid of these conditions. In terms of disqualification, state level disqualification is a lot less likely than it is for a council level or for a federal level, with the exception of course, the ACT doesn't have any local councils. At least the Northern Territory does. The ACT not having it is definitely unique in that aspect of both not having a council and not having any bankruptcy provisions in their constitution, or sorry, the Self-Governing Act. But certainly it isn't one we see very often in any of the states.